Piers, tell our viewers who's sitting next to you.
Well, the one and only Governor Christie. Welcome, Governor.
Piers, happy to be here.
Now, I've been walking around today testing the temperature about your speech last night, and the range of comment goes from absolutely loved it to the most catastrophic, selfish, indulgent speech in the history of conventions.
Yeah, well, everybody's got an opinion. So it makes America great.
Are you surprised by the reaction? It's been pretty extreme either way.
No, listen, I'm not surprised at all that I bring out in people strong reactions. No, doesn't shock me in the least. But my job last night was to lay out what the difference is between Republican governance, Republican ideals, and Democratic ideals, and what that's going to mean for our country in the next 4 years. And I was really happy with the way it went.
The problem is no one would contest that, but they weren't quite sure if you were doing it for your own future presidential race or for Mitt Romney's current presidential race.
I don't know how people could be confused. You know, I laid out the case for Mitt Romney as a former governor. If you can do these things at the state level, like we've done them in New Jersey, it can be done at the national level if you get someone who knows what they're doing. And I don't think anybody was really confused at the end of the night last night who was listening.
The confusion came because you didn't mention his name for 17 minutes, and by the end of the speech, you'd mentioned the word I 37 times and the word Mitt 7 times.
Oh, you know, listen, at the end of the day, what I was doing was building the case for Mitt Romney. Do you think there's anybody here who doesn't know his name? I mean, this is really kind of silly stuff. But listen, I understand that folks in the media have nothing better to do but to do that kind of stuff, and they want to create controversy. I understand that because these conventions have become kind of prepackaged shows, and you all want to have something different to talk about. But I can tell you this. If you look at the substance of the speech last night, which is what I'm most concerned about, it lays out a very clear case that we need to tell people the truth. We need to make hard choices, and we need to implement that now.
The thing I was surprised about, knowing you quite well now, was I thought you liked the red meat on the barbecue when it came to Barack Obama. I thought you would be roasting and grilling him. And you went quite light on Barack Obama. I was surprised by that.
Well, listen, what I did was I went heavy on the case for Republican governance. I don't think anybody in America, except for the most left-wing partisans, believes that Barack Obama deserves a second term. What we now have the obligation of doing as Republicans is convincing them why we have better ideas, why our way would be the better way. And my job as the keynoter is not to tear down the president. My job as the keynoter is to make the case for the Republican brand and the Republican Party, and that's what I did last night.
If you were going to tear down the president, how would you do it?
You know, so I've done that many times. We were in Aspen last week, and I said, you know, this is a guy who I think for the last 3.5 years has been like in a dark room looking for the light switch of leadership. He hasn't found it for 3.5 years. Not going to find it in the next 69 days. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that, but the fact of the matter is that I really believe that case has already been made, Piers. I believe that case has been made against the president. There's nothing new anyone's going to figure out about the president in the next 69 days, but they need to find out things about our philosophy and how our nominee reflects that philosophy, and that's what we did last night. And I worked very closely with the Romney campaign. They had my draft. They knew what I wanted to say, and they didn't change a word of my speech, so I have to assume they're real happy with it.
When it comes to the president, do you think he's an honest man?
Yeah.
You do?
Sure.
You don't think he misleads the American public?
Well, listen, I think he misleads people in political commercials, but I don't think that's breaking new ground. I generally think that he's an honest person, but I think he's dead wrong on policy, and I think he's led this country in the wrong direction. And I also don't think he has the first idea about how to use executive power. But I don't think that means that he is generally a dishonest person.
Has he been dead wrong about everything, or can you find things to credit him with?
Well, I think in certain areas of education policy, I agree with him. In trying to empower charter schools and choice around the country, I think he's been right on that. A bit of his education policy, but some of it.
Foreign policy?
Yeah, I'm not going to go through like a checklist here with you, but I mean...
No, but given that Condoleezza Rice will be up there tonight, and one of the allegations against the Romney-Ryan ticket is their lack of foreign policy experience. She obviously is laced with it. I would imagine she will be pushing that agenda, and as she did in my interview earlier, saying that, you know, it's time for the framework of America's foreign policy to be really determined by whoever wins in November. People are a bit concerned that the Romney-Ryan ticket is lacking in experience.
Well, listen, I think that President Romney will surround himself with an excellent cabinet and excellent advisors, but also a lot of foreign policy, in my view, Piers, is the willingness of the president to make, you know, tough choices. And I think that, you know, Mitt Romney will make those tough choices, and he will not be confusing folks out there. He will stand with our friends, and he'll stand against our adversaries, and he'll get people around him. You know, the one great thing about Mitt, one of the great things about him is that he's not stuck on being the smartest guy in the room. He'll surround himself with extraordinary people to help make his government a success and our country a success.
Given that people have said, you know, why didn't Christie talk more about Mitt Romney? Given that's been the criticism, and clearly you didn't intend that from what you've told me, what else would you say about the man? You know him better than many people now. What are the qualities that maybe we're not aware of?
Well, I mean, this is a man with an extraordinarily good heart. I mean, I've watched him interact with my children. You know, you've seen politicians interact with children, especially the ones that don't know the first thing about it. It's an abomination, right? They're patting them on the head like this, and you know, not knowing how to deal with them. I've seen Governor Romney with my children, with my 8-year-old and my 11-year-old, and he's incredibly engaging with them and cares about them, makes them feel special when he's with them, and wants to pay attention to them. This is a guy who's an engaged father, an engaged grandfather. That tells you something about his heart. And I think that's not necessarily always come through.
Do you want to see more of that on his speech tomorrow? Because when I interviewed his 5 sons, one of them said to me, the trouble with Dad is he's always a CEO in public. He can't sort of remove that shackle of the corporate existence he had for so long. And people don't see the real Mitt Romney that they see behind closed doors. Is Thursday the time for him to sort of metaphorically rip open his jacket and say, this is the real Mitt?
I hope he does, because if he does, the American people are going to like him and trust him and make him the next president of the United States. I'm convinced of that.
When it comes to trust, this election could come down to the economy and to who believes who most about the future for solving the economy. You have an interesting experience in New Jersey. You've lowered taxes and balanced budgets, but unemployment has risen to the highest level since 1977. People will say, well, look, that's a classic argument against the Republican position, right? You've lowered taxes, you've balanced the budget, but it's got you nowhere with unemployment. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, the statistic that it's the highest in 35 years is wrong. It was higher in October, November, December of 2009 than it is now, so it's a bad statistic. But secondly, what we're doing in New Jersey is lowering the number of people who are working for the government. We're making government smaller. That's part of what we're doing. That's going to help to unleash the private sector, and you're going to see those numbers go down over the course of time.
Who do you blame, yourself or Barack Obama, for unemployment?
Oh, listen, for unemployment?
In New Jersey.
Listen, the fact of the matter is that the national economy has a huge effect on what happens in New Jersey, but also, I just told you, I mean, we've made a concerted effort to lower the number of public employees. Our government had gotten too big and too bloated, and we needed to make it smaller, and that's going to have an effect on those numbers, a short-term effect. But the long-term effect is going to be we're going to take more money out of the government back into the private sector. Remember this, we've grown 90,000 new private sector jobs since I was elected governor. And in the last 12 months, we're 4th highest state in America in the creation of new private sector jobs. So the New Jersey comeback has begun, Piers. And it's going to take us a while. I was digging out of a heck of a hole. But we're going to get there.
People who heard your speech last night have been a bit critical. Have said this was entirely a pitch and a play for him to be president. You.
Hey, I don't understand that.
Do you have literally no aspiration to be leader of the free world?
Listen, since last October, I have traveled to 15 different states for Mitt Romney. I sat and allowed you to harass me in my office for an hour that somehow Mitt Romney was not going to win and Rick Santorum was going to be the nominee. And I steadfastly stood by Mitt Romney because I believed he would be the nominee, and I turned out to be right, because I think he's the best person to be president of the United States. So anybody who reads that into it just hasn't watched what I've been doing for the last year, which has been working as hard as any outsider for Mitt Romney and for his election as president. I'm proud to have done it.
Governor, thank you for talking to me. I think you've made a few things very clear.
Thank you,
Back
Piers.
to Wolf.
All right, thanks very much, Piers. Good